Hashtag sorry, not sorry, but welcome back to season 3. And with a dwellers below, dwellers below.
And we are back. And it's not only us that are back, it's also Axemaster that is back. One of the grandest and oldest Warhammer tournaments in the entire world of Melbourne. So, here with me, I have 3 people who managed to brave the scorching heat of Australia to make it all the way, in some cases, 2 or 3 suburbs away from where they live to play Warhammer for a change. So, who have we got? Nick.
Yeah, Nick, the father of lies. I don't think any of us live even remotely close to where Axemaster was for once. It's where we used to all play, but now we've all moved on. And I think the only person who was nearby was Smorgan. He was like, "Oh, I live like 5 minutes away from this. This is great." And he wasn't.
I'm guessing he didn't play.
That was good to see him pop in for a bit.
It was good to see him pop in.
I mean, we both lived kind of near there as well back in the day as well, Nick. So
we did.
Back in that neighborhood. But yeah, it was a great event. Axemaster, so Lachie here, and then Danny as well.
Danny paints underneath Chris up there. 2 or 3 suburbs in Melbourne due to the Australian city spread was about an hour's drive for me. So.
Yeah, I've never been anywhere else where I can literally... I literally drove for 2 hours one time and didn't leave Melbourne, thanks to a combination of distance and traffic.
Why would you ever want to leave Melbourne? Melbourne's great.
Sure.
Because as well as Axemaster being one of the premier and oldest and most traditional events of Melbourne, it was also the 3rd ever Old World event in Melbourne. So we got a bit of catching up to do.
That is cool. True. I moved to the UK to play more Warhammer, and now I spend all my time commuting instead of playing Warhammer.
I noticed that the Old World Fanatics today have put out an episode covering Axemaster as well with one of the players. So anyway, if you've already listened to that, too bad. We're gonna tell you all about it again anyway.
Well, luckily on the Dwellers Below, we even have the tournament organizer, right, who also played in their own event. Definitely no conflicts there.
We've got the TO and we've got the TO and 3 players. Suck on that, Old World Fanatics. We've got nearly a quarter of the field here.
So for people who want Axemaster focused content, this is definitely the best podcast. For people who want other things, I'm sure you can find more coherent and structured events with significantly more organized hosts. So let's, I guess, kick off with a little bit of background.
This is the most Axemasters per minute.
So we've lost Danny, but that's okay. We'll soldier on anyway.
Sorry, the crows, the magpies and crows that I feed were just having an absolute go in the backyard, so we had to quieten them down and shut the door.
Yeah, that is reasonable. So, because I don't actually know much, if anything, about Axemaster, because I didn't go, would Nick, as the non-corrupt TO/player, how was Axemaster set up? What kind of a pack? What were you playing? How did you decide what to run the event as?
Pretty simply, we wanted it to be a Cancon warm-up event, and so as much as possible, we copied what Cancon were doing. So 2,400 points, 20-0 sort of scoring system rather than win-loss-draw. And because Cancon never released their players back, there was no comp or anything like that. So yeah, we kept it pretty simple. We just wanted to be permissive, let people use what they're probably going to use, early next year for the big one. And yeah, one day, 3 games, pretty bog standard little event. There was another event that was meant to be in November, I think, out at Lyndhurst, and that fell down. So we were kind of like, oh, let's organise this in its place. So there's an event at the back end of the calendar.
Mm-hmm. And how many players turned up in the end?
We had 16 in the end, which we were happy with. 20 was our cap, so 16's plenty. Particularly given it's a week or 2 before Christmas. Not really peak gaming season.
Yeah, and good numbers for 3 games as well. You get some decent separation of the field.
Yeah, that's right.
I think it's good, particularly like as the community is starting to rebuild again after multiple editions, and it's taken a little bit longer in Melbourne to really start building, but it's good to get that growth. 16 players is good, and I think we'll continue to grow from there.
Yeah, and small events
Yeah.
are good for that because I was able to go around and talk to everyone and have a chat and meet people and say, hey, how good's old world? Bring your friends. Let's get everything happening.
And the extent of the marketing put into it was creating a Facebook group and occasionally mentioning it on this podcast. So it wasn't really a high effort event. So keen to run another one at some point next year and push it a bit harder and potentially go into 2 days.
Yeah, for example, like the Battle for Green Hollow Vampire's Kiss, which will be happening in February 8th and 9th in Glasgow. Tickets are still available. Your TO will be me. If you're interested, post something in the comments or buy a ticket. There's also a Facebook group if that's your main way to find out about tournaments like Axemaster as well.
Danny, do you have your ticket yet?
No, but this is going to be the most disparate group for hey, we're talking about an event in Melbourne. By the way, you can buy tickets to an event in Glasgow. we just need to get Rage of Sigmar on as well to spruik some Age of Sigmar events in the States, and then we'll be set.
There's a special prize if you can make both events.
All right, so I believe you did a list review in the previous episode, reviewing.
Good plug.
Well, yeah. So, do we need to recap lists, or should we just start talking about the actual event on the day?
If you want to see
go back and listen to
watch
that.
the other video.
Yeah, and then come
talk.
And then the Old World Fanatics Axemaster episode, so you've got all your information.
That's right.
And then maybe
so I used
this episode.
Yeah, so I had my beasts. Lachie was on his ogres, and Danny on his funny Empire army that he copied off someone else.
Absolutely.
So do we want to go around first game, a quick rundown of what happened and learnings?
Yeah, do it, Lachie.
Cool. So game one, I was paired up against Reese with his dwarves. So my understanding is he hasn't lost a game in the last 3 Melbourne events. So yeah, it was great to be matched up against him. Luckily, he was giving me some templates. So I didn't feel too bad when he was, for the oncoming, stomping. No, it's a really strong dwarf list. My goal at the start of the game was to make sure that he's not able to cast magic missiles or get a lot of his shooting off in the first turn. So I deployed quite far back, which I think I did that well. So from the what's the Casket of Souls version of
the Anvil.
The Anvil of Doom, yeah. Plus he had a lot of shooting from the Iron Drakes and Grudge Throwers. I can't do much about the Grudge Throwers, but the Iron Drakes are only 24 inches plus whatever they move. So I basically deployed as far back as I could and to kind of limit that turn 1 shooting, which I think I did a good job of. My problem was that I probably didn't give myself enough movement to actually get away. So he's fanged his unit of 25. They went hammers, the Thanes with the
long
King
beards.
and the BSB, the long beards. That's the one drilled. So he's fanged them up 4 inches up the board, turn 1, right in my face. And I was like, cool. I didn't quite realize that was going to happen. I thought it would take at least a couple of turns to get to me.
Did we not discuss that would happen in that
episode? Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So I think that I gave myself enough space away from his shooting, but I didn't give myself enough space away from him coming and just kind of taking off my whole army with his Longbeards, which was a shame.
So just rammed the Longbeards into your face hole, and you couldn't do anything about it.
Took the whole army off. Yeah, I was probably I misdeployed a little bit. Yeah, it was a shame. And it's hard. Ogres rely on their impact hits, particularly from the Stonehorn and the Mournfangs to kind of whittle down infantry, and you can't do that into that Longbeard unit because they've got the Rune of Hesitation, so you don't get your bonuses to charging. yeah, so that was really the big story. I cleaned up a few of his shooting units. He passed a lot of armor saves, which wouldn't have helped me win the game, but it certainly pushed the margin out a little bit more than I should have. And so we ended up going down 16-4. So yeah, wasn't too unhappy to lose against Reese. He's a great player. So good luck to him for the rest of the event. Danny, I'll throw to you for game 1.
Yeah. So
what do you do different? What do you do different there? Like, given your whole game report was you deployed and then he pushed shit in there. Like, what do you do different?
I think I give myself more space to move out of his charge arcs because he's quick, but he's only got a 10-inch charge or an 11-inch charge or something like that. So being able to do that, I think the other thing that got me was the impetuous on the saber tusks, which basically made did some unlucky charges into him, which then meant he could reform and do his drilled. And drilled is such a crazy rule; it can kind of do whatever you want. So,
do you think you change your deployment? Like, he's got one big block that
kills
everything, right? Like, do you just go corners, make him choose, and hopefully he chooses something that you can get away from? You know what I mean? Like, if you just set up your normal deployment and he runs a block at your whole army, it's easy.
Yeah, the tricky one was it was flank attack, so you couldn't go too wide on the corners. Yeah. And I think because of the terrain, it kind of funneled me into one spot. But I definitely could have. I think I could have given myself more avenues to escape. Is basically
because that's an interesting option where you can, like, I normally my default for flank attack is min 1 unit. Just do nothing and just put everything in the middle. But if you put a whole third of your army on one flank, that's probably better in that scenario.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You can have 33%.
Yeah, so I put my BSB and some saber tusks, I think, on one flank, but like next to the rest of my army was like kind of deployed kind of on the side. What I realized after the event is that saber tusks can be run in open order as well as skirmishes. So I think running them in a unit of 2, but in marching column, so they can't actually charge off impetuous, and then they can zoom even further is probably the way to actually Now I know. But no, I definitely respect the shooting as well. Because I think he did it. Once I pushed up a bit, he did a shitload of damage from his Iron Drakes, his Grudge Throwers. Particularly the Iron Drakes, like the hammer. What are they called? The hammerhead torpedoes. Troll hammer torpedoes. Like, against ogres, that's so scary. They just took off half a unit of Mournfang in one turn, and then the other half the next turn, and then they took off the Stonehorn the next turn. Pretty rough.
Yeah, because if you can't fight the block, there's something to be said for once it fangs at you, run everything past it as best you can, and maybe it'll get the Iron Guts, but if you bail the characters out and can clean up all the shooting, you can win out on points potentially if they're not blowing up so much stuff. But as you say, the saber tusks just can totally mess with that, giving the free combat reforms.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's why it's a good list, because he can fang that block forward and I can't do much about it. And then I go around the sides and then he starts blowing me up with his shooting.
Yeah, if you can ever avoid giving someone a reform in your turn, you just have to. It's so important.
Absolutely, particularly with Drilled, because he got this crazy reform where I thought I had blocked his reform, but then turns out you don't.
Drilled and dragons as well. Like, if a dragon goes and kills something, whatever. If a dragon just fails to kill something and then gets to fight a second round and get the reform before it charges, they become so much worse.
Yeah.
Danny, how was your first game?
Yeah, so just on that note, quickly with Drilled.
No, first game. Tell me.
Sorry. Anyway, my first game was against David Leonard, who is, I think, a pretty well-known face around the community. I know that he's really big into Middle Earth as well. Plays a whole lot of different systems, and is 100% a super invested thematic player. He turned up in a Bretonnian Men-at-Arms helmet.
He had a beautiful Bretonnian army as well.
His army is wonderful. all the
Okay.
streaming pennants and like it looks
Like,
exactly
okay,
like
any
like
event
like
where
turn
Danny
one.
doesn't turn up.
Yeah.
Yeah, any day when Danny doesn't turn up, that's winning best painted.
It was very nice. I really liked that army. And so he was running Bretonians, but nowhere near a meta list. He had no Pegasus Knights. He had one character on a Pegasus, and essentially 2 massive buses of 14 Knights of the Realm with all those characters in them, a couple of mages, a trebuchet, and some questing knights. But he did have the Falcon Horn. And God, that was my first time playing against Bretonians and the Falcon Horn, and it was a very soft welcome to one of the top armies of the game. But that Falcon Horn is so oppressive; it's crazy. Particularly since the list I've conveniently stolen off ASB, Angus Brave, who I'm going to shout out every time because he's helping me out a lot here. It's great. It's a really fun list, but it does rely on 2 Griffins that fly really far and a unit of infantry with the flying spell. So,
do they have any other special rules that might help them when they're flying around and changing formations and things?
The halberdiers?
Yeah.
There is one rule. It rhymes with blue-pilled. No, I'm super infantry pilled and infantry drilled.
Yeah,
coming at
you
you.
were going to say something about drilled before, and then I was exerting.
I was.
As
I just wanted to point out a difference in. I'm pretty sure that in the UK, or I've heard that in the UK, you guys play that because the command models have to remain at the center of the unit, that you do have to distribute models equally left and right when you drilled wider and thinner. Whereas events here so far have not been playing that.
I don't know that that's how expanding your frontage works.
It's not like clarified, right? It's not explained in enough detail.
So
you would logically assume, but it didn't come up. By the way, it didn't come up for me at all this tournament. But yeah, so you can just like whack on your 5 models on the left or on the right.
That is different.
That's
way
interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but if you know the answer in the comments, let us know.
I saw a really crazy, I think it was at the end of the game, Danny, but like really crazy pursuit move that you made. So I think, you broke a unit of his knights or something like that. They had fled through a building. They're safe. And then that's a different game. We're going to get there. Just wait. We're going to get there. Yeah.
That's game 2, but that was crazy.
Was it game 2? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But the game went really interestingly because obviously, Griffin's move 6 and not flying is terrible. And my infantry not being able to fly if I'm anywhere on the board is also terrible. Luckily, I got first turn and managed to do one big fly move right across into the corner to put them as far away from everything as they possibly could be. And the sort of moment, because I'm still learning how to pilot this list, the moment of the game that was most interesting to me was just the maths, the science of finding out what 10 wide halberdiers with all the demonology spells and the warrior priest buff do to a unit of knights if he fails a charge and I get to charge him. And the answer is takes them all off. So yeah, if those, and that's kind of one of the things the list hinges around is being able to choose your fights, putting those halberdiers wherever you want them, and then making them do tough decisions of, do I face them? Do I face the other way with the Griffins or whatever? But the game ended up being sort of me playing as avoidancy and cagely as I can with all the Outriders, everything in my list, doing some sneaky things like moving my Outriders up into a tiny little space they could barely fit into between all of his charge arcs, so that then his Enchantress was the closest model for me to shoot at with my pistols. Fun little things like that. So I picked up a couple of points from questing knights and characters and stuff early on. The Baron on Pegasus was cutting stuff up, as it does, which was very fun. And then he, I think, probably got sick of me being the cagiest loser alive and decided to try for a really long bomb charge with his knights that I just progressively moved further away from. failed the charge, left me open to the Halberdiers and the General and Griffin going in. And yeah, cleaned them up and turned into a nice 13-7 victory for the Empire.
Nice.
Yeah. Howard, the Beasts.
Yeah, so I played Chris Penwarden's Tomb Kings. Not a terribly optimized Tomb King list, but not a weak Tomb King list by any stretch. He had a Sphinx, he had a casket and a big block of Tomb Guard with like a Necrotect and a Herald and a Tomb King in it. So I didn't really know what to do because the Tomb King with the Ogre Blade and the fact that he's in a unit that gives him hatred and +1 attack, just very scary for me. But I knew I couldn't sit back because the casket could just waste my army. Not terribly high leadership with my beasts. So I flank attacked like 3 chariots just in the flank because I didn't really know what to do with them, and I sort of rushed across the board as quickly as I could and managed to get a combo charge into the Tomb Guard block. And what I managed to do was I'd pushed 2 chariots up the flank pretty hard and got them into an Ashabti unit that was sort of a blade of Ashabti unit that was on the flank. And like I went for long charges. I think one of them needed a 5 on the dice, one of them needed a 6. But because they've got Warband, you're essentially rolling 4 dice looking for a 6. So you're actually pretty decent odds of getting those maximum distance charges off with the Tuskor chariots. And so I managed to get that charge onto the Ashabti and break them and reform. And then the next turn, so I got 2 chariots into the flank of the Tomb Guard. What this allowed me to do is because the Tomb King was on the corner of the Tomb Guard, is I managed to engage the Tomb King against a chariot, and that meant the Gorgon and the Spawn that were going into the front of the Tomb Guard weren't fighting the Tomb King. And that was super important because it meant he couldn't just Ogre Blade off the Spawn. It meant he was stuck attacking a chariot, and I didn't mind the chariot getting wrecked by the Ogre Blade because the chariot gets to strike first with its impact hits, and I rolled 13 impact hits between the 2 chariots and took up a whole bunch of Tomb Guard. So that combat went pretty well. So well, in fact, that I killed all of the Tomb Guard, but left all of the characters there with full wounds. So that combat went from being very, very quick, wherein I killed 21 Tomb Guard in a turn, to very, very slow because suddenly all I was attacking was characters, and he still had like banner, had a banner and a war banner, and like was losing D3 less wounds from combat res, and all my free combat res of killing the Tomb Guard wasn't there anymore. So that just ground to a halt. I think he killed a Spawn, he killed one of the chariots, one of them just opted not to go back into combat because it was a bad idea. And we had a bit of a weird situation where like I wasn't following up with the Spawn because I would have been following up into the Tomb King, and then the Gorgon was kind of stuck on the corner of the Spawn following up, and we weren't sure if I sort of slide across or how to finagle it. And we kind of, I think neither of us really knew properly how it worked, and it got into a bit of a weird situation where like we were doing it one way, but then if we continued to do it that way, the units just wouldn't even be in combat anymore. It got very confusing. And then I'm obviously trying to keep the Gorgon away from the Tomb King because the Tomb King's just going to blat the Gorgon. Meanwhile, the Gorgon's trying to killing blow all the other characters that he's in combat with. So it got a bit weird. We eventually resolved it so that the Tomb King was in combat with the Gorgon, because it just got a bit weird, like the Tomb King kind of not being able to attack each turn. And then luckily for me, the Gorgon went at the same time as the Tomb King and just killing blowed the Tomb King. So I lost the Gorgon, but the Gorgon only had 3 wounds left at that point, and the Gorgon killed the Tomb King, and that was kind of the last turn. And the rest of my army just didn't really care about his army. The Scorpions were scary, but I sort of sacrificed some Dragon Ogres to get Spawn into the Scorpions to kill them. And then just sort of rushed everything else forward and got into combat with his Skellies. A highlight for him was probably the casket, which did nothing with its Light of Death all game, despite me being very afraid of it. But then I eventually got a full unit of Gore into combat with the casket, and over 2 rounds did 0 wounds to the casket and lost like 7 Gore, and they broke.
Amazing.
So that was I'm like, yes, I'm into the casket. I killed a catapult. I could have overrun either into his level 4 or the casket. And I was like, I'll get the casket and then I'll go back for the level 4. And then I just got shit beaten out of me by the casket guard and never actually killed the thing. So a 15-5 win in the end because largely because I got that Turn King in the last turn.
You've got a pretty good ratio on getting your Gorgon to hit the 6 on the killing blow onto important characters.
It's got lots of attacks. So.
How many attacks it got?
It's 5. It's 5 plus 2 for frenzy, I think.
Oh damn! Okay. Any reroll?
7, man.
Could reroll once to hit if he gets Primal Fury.
Cool.
So
Not bad.
So scary.
Yeah, so that was the whole ground, the give ground rules causing problems. Was it when the unit started getting small?
yeah, so it basically like the way it was set up was the spawn was in combat, was sort of in contact with the 3 characters, with the Gorgon on the corner to corner with the Necrotect, but then the spawn didn't follow up, and so it's like how do we stay in contact? And so we kind of just kept it corner to corner, and we did that for a couple of turns, but then the spawn was sort of far enough away, and I killed the Necrotect, and it was now like, what's the order? Like, do we because I killed the Necrotect, which was the only thing in combat with the Gorgon. And so normally if that was a rank and file model, you would just take off models so that they're still fighting. But because it's a character, you're taking off that one character, but they're in a unit. So it's like, do they slide across and then I'm in combat with the Herald, or does he get to essentially replace the dead model with another model, which would be the King? And so we just weren't sure how that all worked. It was a bit odd.
Yeah, because the with the whole ground, you're meant to not change formations or anything. It's you don't get to maximize afterwards. It's not super clear.
Yeah, I thought it was you just shuffle it at like the shortest distance. I thought that was the wording. I'd have to have a look.
Yeah, so it was a bit of the hold ground, but then it became, if you've got 3 characters in a unit and you're engaged with corner to corner with only one of those characters and you kill that character, do you slide the 2 directly across to maintain corner to corner, or do you like replace the dead one with the other one? So like, does the King get to sort of hop over the Necrotect, or does the Herald, or does the Herald and the King slide across? So I mean,
my question comes.
I think it's the first one. I think it's the first one because they're pretty clear that like a character can only have one supporting attack. So like actually going wide sometimes when you've got a killy character isn't always the best idea.
My question comes before all of this had happened. Did you kill the Tomb Guard to a model before all of this?
Yeah.
And if so, then he's just got characters. Then are they still in a unit? Because there's no Tomb Guard there.
Characters can join each other.
They can't form units with each other. No.
Interesting.
But they can't join each other to form a unit.
Yeah.
But do they remain in a unit if all the models die?
Yeah. Who knows?
There's no unit there. Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
Well, luckily, there'll be a new FAQ at some point that will answer totally different questions to the ones that we've been asking. Lachie, you played a second game. How did it go?
I did play a second game. Played against Tim Stewart with his Orc and Goblin. So he was playing the list with
I heard the Mad Max list.
Yeah,
Nomadic
Mad Max list. Double Wyvern, he had, a bunch of chariots, a Black Orc War Boss on a chariot, 2 units of 3, Goblin chariots as well, which is cool, and then a bunch of different just light cavalry. So I had to go back and watch the list review, which listeners should do, because I was like, "Oh, Tim, like you're pretty brave not running a mage." And he said, "Oh no, I've got a level 3." And I was like, "That's definitely wasn't in the list review because what he said was pretty brave." Anyway, so
I just 3. Not copy across an entire character.
You just completely missed that. So I was like, "You fool, not having a level 3 or a level 4." But it turns out he did. Didn't matter though because I pillarified him off, which was pretty great. No,
did you then say, see, told you should have brought a level 3?
Exactly. It was.
I maintained, despite missing that level 3, everything we said about that list was still correct.
It was Battle for the Pass, which made him it just gave me more space to play with as well, like from a super aggressive standpoint for him. And then like all of his units have bunched up. So the Pillar of Fire, I just put it out for turn 1, and it just did a shitload of damage across the whole game. My shooting did okay, like particularly with the man-eaters. They got a few wounds off. A lot of the like double fireball every turn, just like, taking things off. I killed one of the wyverns, so the Mournfang charged it, took a few wounds. I think he only had a 5-up armor save, like the armor of meteoric iron, so you couldn't modify it. So it wasn't the super tough one. And then I was ended up able to kill it, I think, with the Stonehorn. By the end of the game, he got a bit unlucky going in to my Iron Guts with his big wyvern and the Boar Boys. He didn't do a lot of damage in the first round, which was quite unlucky for him. And then my Iron Guts did a bunch of damage to the Boar Boys, and they stuck around. Regen on the Iron Guts can really do some work. And then it was funny because I think he forgot to use his Ogre Blade on that wyvern in that first round, which then I thought, oh, okay, I'll charge you in the flank with my Man-Eaters. And then he conveniently remembered the Ogre Blade in the second turn of combat and took all my Man-Eaters off. I think he rolled like 9 wounds or something.
Youch.
Which was, disappointing.
Did Nick forget to copy the Ogre Blade across as well?
Probably.
But I'm looking at his list right now that he submitted, and he does have an Ogre Blade on the Wyvern, but he doesn't have a level 3 mage. That's for sure.
Okay, well maybe
he's got a Black Orc War Boss on a chariot, like 344 points, and then he's got an Orc War Boss on a Wyvern, which is 335 points, and he's got an Orc War Boss on a Wyvern, which is 340 points, and he's got a 94-point Goblin Big Boss, which is like 1,113 points character. So I don't see no level 3, Tim. Neither did Lachie after he fireballed it off.
Yeah, that's interesting. It didn't do a lot, I'll tell you that. But
we're having words, Tim Stewart. We're having words.
Look, I got a bit lucky. The Iron Guts got away. He didn't kill them quick enough, and then they escaped behind a building, and then the Wyvern went off and killed the Iron Blaster, but I was happy with that because, there's not enough points. Meanwhile, I just cleaned up the rest of his points kind of around him. I got pretty lucky on the last turn, being able to... I think I fireballed the second Wyvern to kill that. I think he had 1 or 2 wounds left. I took that off. Meanwhile, the Yetis had charged... So the Yetis did something crazy. So they charged something that he fled from, and then they basically overran into the next unit because of the accidental combat rule. So then they killed that the second unit, then they overran into the third unit, and then the next turn they overran again into the first unit that fled. So they killed like 400 or 500 points in one game turn. The accidental combat rule, if you haven't looked it up, it's actually pretty crazy. There's some of the things that you can do, and how far you can go. I mean, another reason why Swift Stride is so good, because you can kind of just roll a crazy amount and just like kind of fang it forward. But learnings from that game is that battle magic is really good. Having shooting is really good. Pillar of Fire is so good, guys. Come on, you have to.
So did you learn anything new, or?
No, not
I
really.
was just thinking that too. I'm like, okay, everyone knows all this.
It's pretty well established facts.
No, so no learnings.
The learning is keep your level 3 that you may or may not actually have alive.
And don't line up all your chariots like side by side in a column where I can just Pillar of Fire like through the entire thing back and forth.
Yeah.
And check what magic items the Wyvern Riders have.
That's a big
true.
one. That's a big one.
Well, that's what I said. It worked out.
Random YouTube videos for your opponent's army list.
That's true. Well, as I said, he conveniently forgot about the Ogre Blade in the first turn, which put me in a false sense of security. Man-Eaters would have done well had not
The mind
been for that
games.
Ogre Blade.
All the mind games.
Danny, round 2.
Yeah, round 2, I drew Barondorn Gumby, all of our favourite opponents, who had played by Pete and his High Elves with a list he called Bad Birds, because he had a bunch of birds and they were bad. And that was the list. Well, it was kind of, he had one more bad bird than I had, but it was the battle of the bad birds, if you will. Battle of both the bad birds.
Maybe run through the list quickly, because we didn't do that in the list show that no one's going back to.
Oh, yeah. From what I can remember, he had a prince on a griffin with the white sword. Wait, no. Chariot?
It was on a chariot, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a prince on a chariot with the white sword. And then he had another hero on a griffin, which was big and battle-y, big and chompy. And then he had a noble on a horse with the impetuous rule. And
what?
Yeah. It's just some stuff. And then he had another noble, I think, on an eagle. And then for his units, he had a big unit of silver helms, a couple of units of reavers, a small unit of silver helms, a big unit of silver helms, some phoenix guard, a big block, and some skirmishing reavers. He had a level 4, and a Frostheart Phoenix, of all things. So big bad birds.
Are they no good? Frostheart's no good, because they used to be absolutely
They have fallen a long way.
Okay.
Yes, they are less than good. This game was really fun. Pete's a great opponent. He plays so clearly and is so communicative. And
would you believe he didn't want to play the event because he didn't feel like he was sort of clear enough with the rules?
I can believe Pete thought that, but I think like that's not the case. But I can imagine that he would think that because he's so conscientious. There were a few things that he didn't know and a few things that he misunderstood, but we like cleared those up, and it's never an issue. He's a great guy. This was a very funny game because Pete was playing the Gumby, was running a real bad list, just running it at people, and I still managed to misplay and very almost lose.
So Danny.
So it's very Danny. But these are things that, like something you mentioned earlier, and I've already forgotten. It's gone in one ear and out the other. But just little things about the way the game works that no one ever really explains, and no one ever talks to you about, or like tells you should do this in this situation because X, Y, Z. So I put my little skirmishing archers out in front of his army, slow him down. That's good. That's good. Be good. Slow his army down, and then he charged them as he's wont to do because he wants to just charge stuff. And I was like, yeah, great, I'll hold. No, never in that. When the rest of your army is less than or about 12 inches behind those, and then you give him a free overrun, that's a terrible, terrible idea. Terrible idea. What you do is you flee so that he catches and kills them, but then he's in a more vulnerable position. And this was no one ever explained it to me in those terms. So it's something I just never really thought about.
Maybe we felt it didn't need explaining.
Yeah, but you've all been playing Warhammer for like 40 fucking years. And I've been playing for literally the old world. This is my first actual rank and flank, apart from a little bit of 6th.
Well, it's particularly true for skirmishers, right? Because you don't pick the angle that they're gonna, as they form up to you, so you're not picking the angle that that they're overrunning on. If you can get them on a weird, 45-degree angle or 90-degree angle, makes
it wouldn't matter as much. But also because I had a lot of room in my backfield, I just deployed too close and didn't leave myself enough space between units, basically. It's a theme with me. Game 2, I forget how to play Warhammer, or never learned in the first place. But so what happened there was he overran into all the juicy stuff. He just charged everything and got into like the Outriders that very fragile and quite valuable with some characters in there, and like everything was all bad. I managed to Ogreblade his hero on Griffin, which was just about the only win in the early phase of that game. And then I was just kicking myself mentally from turn 1 or 2 or whatever, because he also managed to get what happened? I think I failed a re-rollable terror test on the Halberdiers with like leadership 9 re-rollable. And so I fled, and then he and rolled like 3 and then he caught me and wiped the entire unit. So I was absolutely kicking myself from the first turn of that game, being like, I'm idiot. And Pete, to his credit, I think sensed the vibes from across the table and was like, you know what, I'm not gonna be too crazy here. I'm just gonna like charge everything and be a big bad birds player, which was fun. And he was very good about it. And then the way the game swung out, it became quite close in the end because he wasn't really necessarily like measuring stuff too carefully. He's just like, we'll just have a rough and tumble game. And then like all of his stuff was dying, and also all of my stuff was dying. The incident Lachie was, and the key incident Lachie was talking about earlier was a big stroke of luck which changed pretty heavily the points in the game, where he had made his level 4 wizard ethereal, because you can do that when you're in combat, because I'd managed to charge him with a unit of knights. So I won the combat, and then he fled. And he was like, but I am flying an ethereal, so I will go over this impassable terrain. Haha. And flew away to safety, his 8 inches or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll pursue you. And rolled 3 6s. And had enough movement to get around the impassable terrain and catch him. Which was phenomenal. 18 inches of pursuit to catch a level 4 was a big stroke of luck. And it went right down to the wire of how points were scored with characters at the end, whether or not, if your general was fleeing, you still got the points for the general, even though you only get half the points for that model. Turns out you do, and it was a 10-10 draw. So a very fun game, and a 10-10 draw thanks to the good grace of Pete.
One of those 10-10s where just everything dies, and you're just like, it just happened to be that they added up to the same points.
Yes. Yep. It was like 1570 to 1610 or something, like 30 or 40 points difference.
Or not the stand back in the corner kind of draw.
No, that's definitely not that kind of draw at all, which was good fun, and the true winner was Warhammer. Colin, what'd you do with your beasts?
I also had one of those games. So I was up against James with the vampire counts. So he had the 3 Scream vampire counts with the Abyssal Terror, which I probably didn't respect as much as I needed to.
You kept calling it an abysmal terror, and you thought you were so funny.
Yeah, we said it was shit.
He dispatched the Wood Elf, the Wood Elf list game 1, which is very nice of him. And look, I don't think this is a terrible matchup for me, but it's difficult. My units have innately bad leadership, so when I got some units into his backfield, but then the Mortis Engine and the 2 Banshees just screamed, and they screamed off like 3 units in a turn. I think he screamed off a unit of Gore, a Dragon Ogre in a turn, and a Chariot. Yeah. It was just like, and that was a Chariot that had managed to like get round a forest and get into the Mortis Engine. I'm flanking the Mortis Engine with a Chariot. I'm like, this is good. And then it's just like scream it off. I'm like, that sucks. The Dragon was an issue for me. I gave him first turn, which I don't necessarily think was a bad idea because I had nothing to do in my first turn.
It does actually sound like a bad idea because I don't think you're allowed to give first turn anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Tim gave me first turn in our game. That's interesting to know.
I think whoever wins the roll-off goes first.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Well, I don't know. Either way, we were playing Battle for the Past, which I don't think it cost me a little bit because I couldn't ambush, but I'm not sure I really wanted to ambush anyway. And I won the sort of chaff off. He had lots of little chaff units. My chaff sort of killed all his chaff, but the Dragon flew up and was in a position where it could charge my unit of 3 Dragon Ogres, and there was just nothing I could do because they're immune to Psych.
Oh, so we're calling it a dragon now, not an abysmal terror. It's a dragon.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I see.
Sure.
The wannabe dragon.
I think it was actually a shark, the model that he was using.
That's right.
So that got in, and he got Spectral Doppelganger off, and I rolled really low and actually did a fallback in good order, and I probably would have preferred to have broken fled because then he got to charge me. Then he got to maintain the combat in my turn, killed the Dragon Ogres and reformed because he's against Spectral Doppelganger in the next turn. I got a sort of combo charge off with a Spawn and a Gorgon and the hero on the chariot into his big Graveguard bus and wipe them out to exactsies, including the White Lord, like literally exactly the number of wounds I needed, which was very good because I was well behind sort of at the start of that turn, and suddenly I just wiped out 600 points worth of stuff. But the dragon, like the shark, had chewed through the 3 Dragon Ogres and then got into my Doom Bull's unit. The Doom Bull was doing pretty well at holding him up with the -2 to hit, so everything, because I had +1 weapon skill, so he used 6s with the vampire as well. I'd also rolled for the first 3 turns of the game, rolled +1 strength, +1 leadership on the Doom Bull. So I'm just hitting the shark with my hand weapon at strength 9, like an absolute baller. I'm like, great, I can still use my shield to assist my save because I'm strength 9 base. Who cares?
Does he not have an armor save, the Abyssal Terror?
I get
with
Primal Fury on the Doom Bull, it gets AP 2. If it's got Primal Fury active, if it's using a hand weapon. So give it a strength 6 base, it often just chooses to use the hand weapon and punches things with it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Why I don't give it a magic weapon. But so I was holding up pretty well, but he was getting Spectral Doppelganger off every bloody turn. And then I sort of worked it to a point where I got a multi-charge in with a Spawn in the rear, a Chariot in the flank, and I charged him with a Doom Bull on 2 wounds left. And I sort of gambled by... I sort of gambled in not issuing a challenge because I was like, well, if I issue a challenge, I'm going to lose my Doom Bull here probably. And if I don't issue a challenge and he chooses to attack the Doom Bull, then I lose the Doom Bull, but at least I get a lot of attacks with the Spawn and the Chariot's impact hits and all that kind of stuff. So I did that, did absolutely no wounds. He got the Spectral Doppelganger off, even though I had a level 4 into spell range. I think it did 11 hits and killed 10 gore. And then everything ran away.
A lot of
should
he have Spectral Doppelganger? You go, Lucky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just going to say, should he have issued a challenge, or would that have been the correct move from him?
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe the mistake was that I gave him the choice because he could always choose to issue the challenge. So perhaps I should have just taken that choice away from him because, I mean, that's a sort of rule, right? If you can avoid your opponent having a choice, you assume they're always going to choose the optimal thing to do. So if I could have avoided him having the choice by issuing the challenge, and in hindsight, that would have been a better idea. But yeah, don't know.
The level 2 on with Spectral Doppelganger is a bit of a misnomer because he's got the vampiric ability that makes him a level 3, and the Mortis Engine makes him cast as a level 4. So even if you have a level 4, he should still be casting that, to be honest. Yep. What, 60% of the time? 65?
Yeah, something like that. I think he got it off 6 phases in a row and didn't roll anything below 9 for the amount of hits. It was not a good time.
Very nice.
So yeah, that killed my Doom Bull and his unit. The Spawn kind of got away because he didn't attack it. The hero for this was in this game was the BSB on the Chariot. He got into the rear of the Blood Knights after they did a few overruns trying to get to my mage, and because he has to accept challenges, I'm just like, every turn I've got banner, war banner, rear, and I'm a close order unit, and then so I've got 5 combat res base, and then he's got a banner and a close order. So I'm up 3 every turn. He's only getting to attack with 1 guy, and I'm generally doing a wound or 2 with my sort of 4, at that point, 4 great weapon attacks. And so he chewed through the whole Blood Knight unit on his own and got me a lot of points back. And it ended up being again, 1,500 points to 1,500 points. I think he had the Shark Riding Vampire Lord, the Mortis Engine, and not a lot else left, but I also didn't have heaps left.
Nice. I'm glad to hear that the Abysmal Terror is doing well, because I'm starting to get ideas about running one of those myself. So
yeah, I mean it's obviously a bit cheaper than the Vampire Lord, and the fact that it's on the smaller base, like, it makes it a lot more maneuverable. Yeah, I think the Dragon is still potentially better, but yeah.
What a massive base. Yeah, that's right. Gentlemen, I'm going to have to hit you with a hot spoiler and then love you and leave you because, unfortunately, I'm running on a strict schedule today. Things are all piling up. But I just would like to, for the next segment of the show, which unfortunately I won't be partaking in, Game 3, obviously. I just like our audience to really keep in mind some of the things that Chris was saying at the start. I think are really pertinent to what happens over the next few minutes of this show. Just things like TO corruption, rigged tournament, perhaps, cheating, even. But just words like that, read into that what you will. Nick played me, he drew me and fucking crushed me. What a piece of shit. But I'll leave.
Fix the draw.
Well, actually, that game was a lot closer than our past games have been, and I was very happy about it. But I'll leave it to Nick to explain. I'll leave a cute little picture here, though, so you have the 4 symmetrical portraits. Love you. Bye. Bye, our audience.
Bye.
So, Nick, how did you try to cheat Danny?
Have we lost Nick as well?
Okay, well, yeah, I guess Danny must have taken him out in vengeance. So, Lachie, what happened in your third and final
game?
game?
Yeah, so I played against, I think his name was Nathan, another Orcs and Goblin list. So this was a list. It was a good list. The standard Wyvern, so the 2-up, 5-up, 5-up, Great Weapon, Black Orc Wyvern. He had a big unit of Black Orcs. He had a big unit, I think it was like 12 Boar Boys. He had 2 level 4s and then 2 big units of Night Goblins. He had some Spider Riders, which was pretty cool. 5 or 6 Fanatics. He didn't have any War Machines, which was interesting. And we talked about this after the game, but I said to him, it's interesting not having War Machines because, he can do some damage, at range, but it's also, I can't kill his War Machines to, pick up some early points because, I've got, the Iron Blaster and some poison shooting to try and, take off those kind of things early. So I could, he didn't have any easy points to get, because of a lot of the big blocks. But in the center of the table, there was a forest, which I kind of hugged that with a few of my units, and he kind of, I'm not sure if it was intentional, but he kind of moved up his 2 units of goblins up that way with the Fanatics, of course. So the Fanatics' impact was pretty limited, and by the time I was able to charge into them, they were disrupted. So I could kind of take them off a lot easier because they didn't have steadfast and things like that. I was denying them ranks. On the flank, he put his Wyvern, and I think he might have gone a little bit too wide with the Wyvern. He was kind of he was trying to go really wide, and then that allowed me to kind of just move my guys away from him. And I don't think the Wyvern actually made combat all game, which I was very happy about. I think he probably could have moved slightly differently to be able to line up the charges, but I kind of just shot past him after he'd kind of moved up, and kind of eventually got there. The big moment of the game was he had some impetuous fast cav on the flank, which had to charge my Mournfang, and it was a long charge, but he got in. So the Mournfang beat that unit, didn't kill them, and then so they fled, but I failed my test to not overrun or pursue. So I ended up having to pursue, which made me vulnerable to the counter charge from the Boar Boys. However, the Boar Boys were in combat with some Saber Tusks, and I kind of blocked them up, and he was unlucky with not killing the unit of 4 Saber Tusks. So and then not overrunning and pursuing far enough or something like that. So that allowed me to get a counter charge with the 4 Mournfang and 8 Iron Guts into his 12 Boar Boys, which took them off pretty easily in one turn, and then and then overran directly into his big unit of Black Orcs with a level 4 and BSB, and that killed them in the kind of the final turn. So that was a massive point swing, of course. And of course, the other level 4, my Pillar of Fire, took him off. So.
Yeah, so learning points is that Pillar of Fire is quite a good spell?
It's really good. It's really good. I think, things that we kind of already know is that orcs can be really good, but the fanatics need to do work, and they probably didn't do enough work in this game. I think black orcs aren't as scary as they seem, and then boar boys are super scary, but only if they charge. They're pretty paper if they don't get that charge, which it's interesting.
It sounded like maneuvering around terrain was quite helpful for you as well, which I think is something that I'm a big advocate for. I think having like terrain in interesting places on the table is pretty good for the game, and it sounds like that changed the shape of this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I always try and anchor my flank around a piece of terrain, whether it's a wood, like a forest, or an impassable terrain, because that just really helps like protect the flank. I think it's quite interesting how slow you can be, like particularly charging through a forest, because like you're on the 2 dice that you roll, not including Swift Ride, the 2 dice that you roll, you're choosing the lower one, and you're also at -1 movement, so it can really hinder units, actually.
Really slows you down.
Particularly for some of the big unit, the longer charge ranges.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
And playing 700 practice games against Jabes, Orcs, and Goblins probably helped a bit as well.
It did, yeah. It's good. I definitely Orcs and Goblins now are one of the armies that I kind of know what they do and what to expect. So there's not too many gotchas. But yeah, so that last turn or two where I just kind of like got into the boars and then into the Black Orcs lined me up for a pretty handsome 18-2 win, which
nice.
which is pretty good. So ended up on 2 wins and 1 loss. I think I was like maybe 36 battle points across the 3 games.
Solid.
Happy for that one.
Nick, how did you cheat Danny?
What did he say? Because I thought he'd done this perfect bit, right? He's like, "Oh, I've got to go. I'm just going to say one little thing," and then then I saw his thing go blank, and I thought he had just left. I'm like, "This is what a great bit! Like, it's done the disconnect bit," and then everyone else disconnected as well, and I'm like, "Ah, fuck."
Oh no!
I think it's me.
Yep.
Said that you're a scholar and a gentleman.
He said that you rigged the draw, then cheated him in the game, and then hit him on the way out.
Yeah, that sums it up pretty well. I did rig the draw. I definitely wanted to play Danny in the last round. I did cheat in deployment. I blatantly cheated. He went off to the toilet, and I was sitting there, and I was just like, the clock's ticking. I want to get the game done. And I just did one of those things that we used to do back in the ETC days when we were practicing, was I just deployed without him being there, and I just deployed all of my units. So rather than like doing alternating deployment, I just went fuck it and just deployed all my units. And then he got back, and I said, "Well, I finished deploying first, so I'm going to get the +1." But I knew he had scouts, so I knew I was getting +1 anyway because I didn't scout my unit. But so I deployed everything in sort of a way that I could cover off on wherever he deployed. Did it cost me? Absolutely, because he then just corner habit everything into a corner for the most part, and set up very sort of, he really swung one corner and did a sort of faded the flank. But it was fun because he's come back from the loo, and he's like, "What the fuck?" But it's a good thing to do sometimes, is to, because sometimes I find you get lost, particularly when you're playing in new armies. You get lost in the alternating units. You just kind of go, "I'll put a unit down, you put a unit," and you really don't really think about it. You don't really plan it ahead. And sometimes actually just deploying everything at once, you can think, "What's my most optimal way to deploy this my army?" And you think more about your own stuff than about your opponent's stuff. And sometimes that's an important starting point.
Yeah, I had a game yesterday where that exactly happened to me. I was alternating, putting down my chaff first, and then realized I couldn't actually put things that wanted to be near each other where I might have done that if I'd gone the other way around. Particularly
depending what army you're playing. Like, I know, like, because the ogres have such big footprints, and they also really want to be really wide often. So I need to be very careful as well. Like I could just put all my Sabertusk down. I put my Sabertusk down, but it's like, in what order do I put the other things down? I think normally I'll put 2 units of Sabertusk down, then just the Iron Guts. I'll just put them kind of in a kind of good spot there, and then I can build the deployment around them, because I know that if I leave the Iron Guts too late, I'm just going to run out of room. I think, something like an Iron Blaster probably wants to go down, near the end as well to make sure it gets a good some good targets and things like that. But no, I think that's very smart, Nick.
But yeah, this was a good game because it was different to I've played a couple of games against Danny's Empire recently, and they've gone very well for me because he plays. They were very static lists, and my list is just runs across the table and wants to get in combat. It doesn't really muck around, and so he had sort of very static lists that once I got to him, there was nothing he could really do. I was in there and I just wiped his army. This game, he's playing a much more mobile list. He's got that halberdier unit that can just warp through. He's got the Outriders have 3 characters or 2 or 3 characters lurking around them, so he and the Griffins and stuff. So he sort of stacked one flank and pushed up pretty hard. But then when I sort of pushed through the center, he just faded away into the corner that he'd vacated. And it meant, whereas previously I'd gotten to him and just once I was in there, I just completely wrecked his army. I never actually got into his big points. So I got the Demigriffs and the Steam Tank pretty quick. I just rammed the Doom Bull forward, went for a max distance charge with the Doom Bull again, with Warband looking for that 6. Got the Doom Bull into the Steam Tank because I know I've got strength, I've strength 8, AP 2. Again, I think I was weapon skill 7 from the Eye of the Gods, so I was hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s, and I don't mind the Steam Tank just hitting me back. It doesn't hit back that heavily. So got into the.
We lost Nick again.
It might be, yeah. I think he's gone.
Well, he got into the Steam Tank, probably killed it, and it sounds like the game was won thereafter. So congratulations, Nick.
I believe it was a 13-7 victory for Nick, which, as he said, is definitely a lot closer than some of their games that they've played recently.
Yeah, and I really like Danny's Empire list, or the list that Danny stole. The double Griffin plus the Flying Halberdiers is not like super strong threat in the way that a dragon would be, but still very mobile and very threatening to anything short of a dragon or a giant Death Star. And Empire normally don't have anything like that to play around with.
Yeah, I like it. He didn't have heaps of cannons, right? I don't think he had any cannons in that
just
list.
One on the Steam Tank, I think.
Just the Steam Tank, which is a poor cannon. That's a bad cannon. But yeah, you've really got to respect those halberds if they can get in. They'll just, take you off with all the buffs. But at the end of the day, they're only charging D6 plus 4, right? So,
yeah, which is where being able to fang them 36 inches and sit right in front of someone, just don't give them anywhere to wiggle out from, does help a lot. Turns out if your infantry can move 36 inches in a turn, they become a lot more reasonable than they were before.
So Danny did do this. I am back, by the way. I'm now tethered off my phone because I'm not sure what's happening with my home Wi-Fi. But Danny did this. He yeeted forward the Halberdiers, went them super far, but I'd left a Dragon Ogre in my backfield and a unit of Gore just to kind of cover off on that. And the way he'd positioned the unit was such that the Dragon Ogre was going to make contact with his Mage Lord. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I'm just going to... And I'd moved stuff far enough away from the Halberdiers that even a reform in my turn, if he broke the Dragon Ogre, wasn't really going to be too harmful. So I'm like, I'm just going to charge this Dragon Ogre in and try and kill his Mage Lord with it, because he's got no ward save. And so he's like, I better flee. And then he fled through 3 or 4 of his own units. And so he ended up flying 36 inches over a building, miles into my army, and then fleeing probably 28 inches backwards through his own units, and just basically being in sort of the same spot, but having covered 60 inches of table in the course of one game turn.
It's insane.
But yeah, so that was a funny element of the game, because he did that. He sort of come forward with the opposite corner, so there was no dispelling at all. It was just everyone was getting whatever magic off they wanted, and so my guy was sort of popping himself around with the movement spell from Illusion. And using Vile Tide with the Hag Tree Fetish to just blast off entire units of knights. He sort of blasted off a knight unit. I got it into his Griffin Lord, and he made 5 ward saves out of 5. I'm like, well, that's disappointing. Then I got into the other Griffin Lord, and just wiped it off in a turn.
Jesus.
So, yeah, the Vile Tide was having a good game, but his shooting was starting to take its toll. He killed a few of my chariots, and he got the Ogre Blade Griffin into a spawn, which I was okay with because the spawn's relatively tough. I think the turn he charged, I had a ward save on the spawn. He then proceeded to never even roll a successful wound with the Ogre Blade. I think he did 2 wounds to the spawn in 4 rounds of combat with the Griffin, but the spawn also
He's only
did
got like 3 attacks, right?
Yeah, that's the issue. He's got 3 strength, 6 attacks. I'm tough for 6, so. But the spawn also did 0 wounds across those 3-4 rounds of combat to the Griffin. And so we just both sat there for like literally 2 game turns, not doing anything to each other, which was okay because that was 170 points of spawn. And so, yeah, apart from killing like the demis and the tank with the Doombull and his unit and the Gorgon, I didn't really kill much else because he had that ability to sort of fold that flank in. And he didn't kill it, but he didn't kill very much of my army. I think he killed a couple of chariots and a small unit of dragon ogre.
Cool. So, how did you finish up overall, Nick? Was it 2 wins and a draw? No, lost Nick again. Yeah. How did Nick go overall, Lachie?
It was 2 wins and a draw. I think he had 38 points, so 2 more points than me. He came 3rd, I came 4th. And then, the winners was, James, I think, won with his vampire list, who went 10-10 with Nick. My understanding is he got a win. Yeah, and my understanding is he got a big win in the last round, and I think leapfrogged the top table. So the top table was Reese against Scott. So that was Dwarves against Vampires. That was a 6 scream list. I think Reese had maybe it might have been a 12-8 win. I think I came at the end of the game there just to kind of see the game state. I could see that Scott had kind of screamed off all of the Longbeards, but the characters kind of remained, and I think he'd shot off a few things. So a narrow win there, which allows James's vampires to kind of leapfrog and take out the win. So abysmal terror, not so abysmal in the end.
Yep, always glad to hear something cool like that, and also Reese still not losing a game of Old World potentially. Pretty cool there as well. Same
dwarf list. He just no one can get him. So like maybe there's some anti-dwarf meta in the future coming.
Yeah, and overall sounds like it was a good and fun event. Congratulations to everyone for making it happen, being there, playing some games. Nick, as TO / corrupt player / rigging the draw onto the podium. Any reflections on your first running your first tournament in a new Old World?
Sucks to suck, Danny.
That's helpful.
Yep, that's the key taking. No, look, it was good to run an event and sort of. Yeah, like it was only the 3rd event this year, so I'm keen to get more events happening next year in Victoria. That would be good. Like I was looking at the rankings websites today, and you can just see like how many other events are going on around the country. Like WA, there's heaps of events in Perth, I think. So it'd be good to get more events happening, and hopefully maybe some 2-dayers would be nice. But it was just good. Like I said, I think at the end of the event, that's the first Warhammer event I've played since Cancon. Not this year, but the year before. So we're talking. It's been nearly 2 years since I played in a Warhammer event. So it was really novel to play 3 games in one day, and just and have that whole day playing games. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, excellent.
What are we? Yeah. Go on, Lachie.
What was the question? What was my take?
Final thoughts on Axemaster.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. Awesome day. I'll keep saying it, but I really like 2,400 points over 2,000. I think. I finished my games, but there are obviously a few games that didn't get finished in the 2.5 hours. I think it was around
none
there.
of mine finished.
Yeah. Which that still happens at 2,000 points as well, right? So it's tricky. Having more time would be good in the day, but there isn't often because like more time would allow you to actually talk to
the timings were already pretty tight. Like we were doing 2-hour 40-minute rounds, so we only had a half hour for lunch, and I think a lot of people were surprised how quick the lunch break was. But yeah, it was just, I don't know, the game does run longer. Certainly none of my games finished, and I was trying to keep the pace of play up relatively quick, but I have a lot of units in my army, which probably doesn't make it easy.
Yeah.
But
it's tricky, particularly when you want to actually socialize, right, and like talk to your mates, and like there wasn't heaps of opportunity to do that, unfortunately.
I'm super keen for Cancon's 2 days per game, 2 games per day over 3 days. So 6 games over 3 days, heaps of time to play, heaps of time to relax, heaps of time to catch up with mates. Like I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I've been finding that getting through games is definitely possible, but you sort of need to, from the start, not be chatting and
hustle.
Like, get through those early turns, especially really quickly, and you need both players to be doing that as well. And it's not as much fun as getting to spend like 3.5, 4 hours on the game, chat, socialize. I'd rather do that, but the way the game works, it just you then don't get through the full 6 turns quite a lot of the time.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of Cancon, Lachie, I'm not sure if you're playing. I think you haven't made your mind up yet. If you were going to play Cancon with the ogres, what are you doing with your list?
I think if I play Cancon, I drop probably the Yetis. I love the Yetis, but you probably want to take. I think you want double Iron Blaster with the ogres at 2,400, so that's probably what I'd do. I quite like the Man-Eaters. Again, we've talked about them before. They're quite expensive, but coupled with the level 4 and the Iron Blasters, they do put out a fair bit of range damage that people need to respect. So yeah, it's probably the list as is. With the second Iron Blaster.
Siege
instead of the 200 points of Yetis. Yeah, that's right.
Nick?
What about you, Nick?
I think I'm done with the beasts now. I enjoyed the beasts, but I like a more flexible games plan, and the beasts were very much... I felt like the mage just wasn't really contributing a lot from a magic perspective, and against Danny...
Apart from taking off the Griffin?
Yeah, he did well in the game against Danny, but the first game, my opponent's playing a level 4 on a casket and doing a fair bit with their magic. At the second game, my opponent's playing a level 4 on a level 3 on a dragon and a level 4 on the Mortis engine, and was just throwing spells around everywhere because he got +1 to cast from the Mortis engine, and there was nothing I could do about all these spells he was casting. So I'm pretty keen to have a bit more magic defense, but also just like... I found in the first 2 games, and I'm playing Undead, so Viletide's never going to be particularly good, but my mage just wasn't casting any spells because I hadn't rolled up the movement spell. So the main spell I had was Plague of Rust, which was barely relevant against the Tomb Kings, and very little had very little relevance against the vampires. Occasionally chucking it on the Blood Knights if I could get it off. So for 2 games, he really just did absolutely nothing. So I think I'd rather, because my game plan was to just rush into combat. So all the enemy units were in combat, and I was like, well, I've got nothing to magic missile. I'm sitting there with 3 magic missiles on this bloke. So
That's
keen to play the warriors, and I wanted to play the beasts because I've been painting the beasts, and they're my most painted army. But I think I'm pretty keen to play the warriors for Cancon. I've got a few lists to choose from. Whether I use I've got a dragon list that I think is going to be fun and very powerful. I've got a cavalry bus list without the dragon, which I think is probably a little bit more balanced and probably pretty strong across a 6-game event. And then there's an interesting list with a demon prince, which I want to try out. And I'd love to play practice games with all these lists, but the list submission deadline is the 5th of January, and I'm not sure I'll play any games between now and then. So we'll theory hammer that shit out.
Yep, that's a nice and early list submission time. So you'll have
That is
lots of time
very
to
early. 3 weeks,
paint and
isn't it?
refine your submitted list.
I wish it was a week later because it would allow the Empire Arcane Journal, and it would just I could probably get a game or two in that week, but I'm away over Christmas, and so yeah, a week later to a standard 2-week list submission window I think would be ideal, but 3 weeks out probably gives them more time to check some lists. There's going to be lots of lists for them to check, and
Yeah.
I mean,
Make sure there's no
complaints. It
extra
makes their
level
job
3
easier.
wizards in there.
Yes.
Will you go with a painted army, do you think? Or will it be fully painted? There's 20 battle points in the line.
Yeah, I'll definitely play a painted army. It's whether it might not be consistently painted, so I might use some of my old warriors stuff on adapted bases.
Right.
But like having painted the beasts, like the 2 spawn are now painted, 3 dragon ogres are now painted. I probably only need 1 or 2 more dragon ogres to paint, and that's a decent part of the warriors army. And then
that's your that and the characters, and then all you've got left is core.
Exactly. So it's whether I'm just painting up some knights and Forsaken, and then some characters. Alternatively, I could just I don't have all the knights, but I do have most of the characters from my old warriors army that I could use. But I've got some cute little goofball old school dragon ogres that I just arrived in the mail. So I'll be painting that up because I've got this 6th edition sort of chaos army that I want to paint up eventually. But what I'll do is I'll probably paint the stuff I need and then use the dragon ogres and stuff that I've already painted, and then I'll continue and paint them later.
Awesome. Do we want to discuss anything else now, or leave that for another episode?
We are always struggling for episodes, so let's leave it for other episodes. I think the Empire stuff's been talked to death on other shows, so we won't go over that. I think Danny's a bit bitterly disappointed by it, as we probably expected him to be. He was all hype, all sausage, all sizzle, and now there's no sausage. So
yeah, for the Middle Earth strategy battle game fans, there's been a lot of that. The same with a new edition that's come out and some mixed reactions to it. So. Lots of hype and deflation at the moment, but on the plus side, tournaments are happening, people are rolling dice, and from the sounds of things, having a really good time doing it.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
All right,
absolutely. And I know that that Rob and Val from Squarebase has just announced Old World World Championships coming up as well. So we might have to get a Dwellers team going in the next couple of years. But it's not country based. It's just bring 5 of your mates. Let's go.
Interesting. Yeah, they've been refining what they're doing with the Old World Masters here in Australia as well, which I'm excited. So they've sort of announced the season's going to be an 18-month first season. So it's going to happen. The event itself will probably happen sometime in September, but the essentially tournaments and through till the end of June all count for the rankings and stuff like that. So Cancon's going to be a big influence on that this year, but I'm keen to see how that develops, and always keen to do the Masters, whether I qualify and play or if I just go along to watch, or maybe we do some coverage or something.
Alrighty. Cool. Lots of good plans in the future. That's going to be all from us for today. We have been and continue to be the Dwellers Below. Don't fail your strength test.